Alright guys, I know it's been a little while since I've done a review, but I've been really busy lately, and you're probably wondering, why do I have an Optimus I've reviewed and two figures I haven't reviewed yet, but I've used them or their mold mates in size comparisons? Well, I'll tell you why. Because instead of being size comparisons, they're going to be resized themselves. I spent all this time making a shrink ray, so we're going to go ahead and take aim at these guys. And zip. Well, that certainly didn't go as intended, but luckily I have a fix for this. My daughter made me this little paper snake. His name is Cobalt, and he's going to blep the burned piles of Transformers, and hopefully we'll fix this. Blep, blep, blep. We did it! What's going on, guys? Today we're going to be taking a look at these figures. I haven't done a review in a little while because of the fact that my work schedule this week has been kind of crazy, so I've had no time to record anything, and because of that I decided to just record reviews for the 4 core classes I haven't done all at once. I just got 2 of them recently, and the other 2 I've had for varying lengths of time. And if you sharp-eyed viewers may have noticed, one of these things is not like the other. That's right, it's Iguanus. He wasn't in the intro cutscene. Shame on you, Iguanus. No, I'm not. Alrighty, now with all of that out of the way, actually Shockwave is the different one, of course, being from the Studio Series line. He is paired with Ravage, but I got Ravage a long time ago because I had the Soundwave he went to. Finally picked up Shockwave, I like him. Picked up Iguanus, I like him, and I liked his weapon, but I was like, I want the sword, so I got the other 2 guys. But it worked out for more reasons than just that, because one, I like Skywarp, he's my favorite Seeker, and Hotrod became useful for a different reason. But we'll get into that later. Without any more introductions or delays, we'll go ahead and start taking a look at these guys, starting with the boxes. So here you have the Core Class Hot Rod box. Let's go ahead and angle up a bit. You have artwork of him here at the top, firing his sword like a laser for some reason. Takara Tomy Generations 8+, Transformers Legacy. You've got his name there with the Hasbro logo. On the side you have your Autobot decolletage, collage, magage, oshgosh. On this side you've got Hot Rod in his robot mode wielding his sword. He is a core class figure in several languages. And on the back you have your, I gotta go up even more, man, these things are tall. You've got your product shots on the back with him in a robot mode and him in a vehicle mode. There's his name again, 8 steps. You've got your warnings and your sad babies that are 0 to 3 on a rating of happiness, which is very low. And then you've got your barcodes and whatnot, Hasbro and all that again. And on the bottom of the box you got more lettery words and things. Hooray for box. Box number 2, second verse. Much like the first, in this case, we're only going to show the differences, which is this picture of Skywarp in his airplane mode. You've got this picture on the side of him in robot mode with his tuning fork, whatever that's supposed to be. Here he is on the back with his product shots, and his tuning fork goes on the front of the jet like the sonar dish weapon the Masterpiece has, but lame. And then you've got your Decepticon collage on the side. Iguanus' box. There he is in his little motorbike mode. And he does do a laser cannon on his head for some reason. And then you've got him firing laser eyeballs, because even they think his weapon is silly. And this image of him has him using laser eyes instead. Then in the back of the box you have your product shots of him as a motorcycle and him as an Iguanus. and that's about it. This is the same as Skywarp's. And now on to a slightly different box. Here we have the box for the Studio Series Core Class Shockwave. There he is in robot mode up there with the Takara Tomy and Generations label. You've got Transformers Bumblebee. Probably forgot to show this angle on the other boxes, but who cares, really? Transformers, Bumblebee, Shockwave, Studio Series 8 Plus, Hasbro. Here on the bottom you have words, and the barcode is down on the bottom this time. Hooray for differences. And then here on the side you have Shockwave as a robot, and here on the side you have Shockwave as more of a robot. They were too scared to show his vehicle on the box in any artwork form because they didn't have it, probably. Here he is on the back in his alt mode and his robot mode. Bumblebee movie at the top, 13-step conversion. He's complicated. You've got words and things like that. There's the sad baby again. There's Hasbro, and whenever that S symbol is, I don't know. I never read that. If you can see those words, because I can't right now unless I held it up to my face. Also, we can't forget to mention Core Class in several languages. And that's it for all the boxes. We'll go ahead and angle down. I just realized I don't have my light on. Bam! Alright. Now everyone's brightly lit. It is cold this morning, so my nose is going haywire because it was like 80 degrees and now it's not, and my nose doesn't know what's going on, so I apologize for my sniffliness. With that out of the way, we'll go ahead and get into the reviews of the vehicles proper. Now starting off here, Shockwave has his accessory attached. It is part of the vehicle, cannot be detached, so that's on there from the start. But we'll go over how it attaches when we get to everyone else's accessories. Starting with the vehicle mode, it is his robot doing an H-Tank, like most H-Tanks H-Tank. It kind of makes me think of what happened if the Scorpion from Halo got infected by Covenant technology. That's what this looks like to me. If any of you know what Halo is, some of you probably do. Got his hands hanging out the back here. It's Core Class, I don't mind. Treads are painted gray. You've got more gray paint up here on the treads in his knee. This paint right here is purple. You've got some gray breakup with the feet and the thighs coming up here to the top, or the front I should say. You've got more gray painted down here on top of the purple between his feet and his leg. You've got some silver here on the barrel with a gunmetal on the actual turret itself, and then most of the rest of this is just different plastics. The side is the same, and the bottom surprisingly doesn't have visible head syndrome on the bottom. Just got some tread details, no rolling wheels, but it's very tiny, so I can understand that. They aren't even like molded in, but they did mold in these little flat surfaces, that way you can get them standing without wobbling if you try hard enough. Now the visible head syndrome, they saved it for at the back of the tank. There we have your visible head syndrome. We found it. You've got nice yellow paint on the eyes and some of that silver beside the eye, but we'll take a look at that in robot mode again. And then the hands are painted the same color as these treads. And that's basically it for him as a vehicle. He does not roll as rolling things should because he does not have wheels in his treads. Moving down the line, here we have Iguanus in his vehicle mode. This is what it's supposed to look like. It's supposed to kind of be an homage to his Inner Robots motorcycle that it formed when it came out of the shell. I just looked him up this morning as a, I don't want to say it's a pretender. I didn't really know what they were, like definitively, but I looked it up, and so this is a alt mode based on his inner shell's alt mode that turns into the outer shell of Iguanus, if that makes any sense. But taking a look at the vehicle mode, here on the back you've got some gold paint on the robot kneecaps. The wheels are painted red. I don't think they're molded this color. I believe this is paint. And then you've got a different color red on the torso area here that becomes I guess body of the bike where you would have your readouts and stuff. Like you sit here, there's a tail, there's a seat. I have tiny humans in the kitchen. You're probably going to hear them in the background because they're being very loud. Up here on the front of the bike, you have more of that red, and you have a little windshield painted on. Nice Decepticon logo in the middle. It does look very Cobra-like, which would please him because he is obsessed with scaly things, as I read this morning. And then you've got some black paint here on the strut that holds the wheel, which is obviously his forearm and fists hanging out there. On the bottom, you've got just the painted red wheels, and you can see this little bit of paint here that's his waist. We'll go over that in robot mode. Here from the front, you've just got a front perspective of the paint I described. Here from the back, you've got a back perspective, and here from the top, you've got a top perspective, and that's Iguanus. Now, he might stand for you on his own, but he does topple a lot, so I invented a kickstand for him very simply by unplugging his foot and just angling it like so, and then he stands on it like a kickstand. And the joy of that is that you can do it with either foot, so you could have him lean either way. Moving on to Skywarp. This is a mold we've seen before, way back in like my third review ever, which is terrible, and you should only watch it if you want to cringe at how awful it was. I know I'm not great at this now, but I was even worse back then. But taking a look at Skywarp, he has some painted purple stripes and Decepticon logos on his wings. He's got painted orange for the cockpit, which, orange and purple, I'm going to like it because they're there. You've got silver up here for these little intake areas. The back wings here are painted purple, they're not molded purple. And then it continues to the engine feet area. From the side, you can see that he's got purple painted arms, and you know they are painted because you can see the slider in there, and you can see some of the black plastic coming through. There's the purple painting on the vents still. There's his head hiding away up in the nose cone like they do. And then here on the bottom, you've got the silver and orange paint on what will be his torso. And you can see that the purple paint goes all the way around the arms and the feet areas. And that's pretty much it for your bottom. No landing gear. It's a 4-class figure. The Voyager class didn't even have any. And then again, we saw this briefly, but here he is from the back. Here he is from the front, and that about covers Skywarp. Articulation, you can flap these if you want. You could technically flap these, but they're plugged into so many things that I don't feel like plugging the stuff back in. Also, Iguanus, he has rolling articulation. Forgot to mention, he does do a do-to-do. And here we have our final core class vehicle mode, which is the Hot Rod core class. And I know a lot of people don't care for this figure, and I only have two major gripes with it, which I'll get into in the robot mode, because here in vehicle mode I don't really have any issues. This shape kind of reminds me a little bit, I had it a while back, mind you, so I might not be remembering correctly, but it kind of reminds me of the Titan's Return Hot Rod. It's a good shape for a hot rod. It's a fun, small little car that will indeed do a do-de-do because it has 4 rolling wheels on these clip hinges that everyone loves so much. You've got this red spoiler completely and utterly covered in some orange paint. The whole body is molded in red except the wheels, which are in black. So if they could do black wheels, I don't see why they couldn't have just molded some yellow plastic, the same plastic that the Voyager Deluxe has, because I think it would have looked just as good, and then some paint could have gotten to some other places. But you've got the paint deco on the hood, looks really good, except for the lack of Autobot symbol. You've got silver there inside of the yellow, inside of the orange. You've got the blue paint on the windows, which I think might be the same tint as Iguanus's paint. So they just use the same paint, saving that budget so they could use paint on both. And it doesn't look bad either, so that was a smart choice on their part. You've got silver down the sides on these pipes, and then you've got the black wheels with the red in the middle. If that really bothers you that much, you can at least fix the color by popping the wheels off carefully so you don't break them. sharpieing up your nubbin and then putting the wheels back on once it's dry. Here he is from the back. You've got some tail light details, not painted in, but it's nice that they're there. And then there's a gap here, but it's a core class, so I don't care. Then the bottom of the feet are molded in an angle and kind of textured to help them stand, I'm assuming. It's kind of like how Skywarp's feet look, where they've got some random molded stuff on them. Then from this side, he's pretty much the same, but backwards. Here he is from the very top, so you can see all the paint on the top of the figure. Here he is from the bottom. He definitely has visible head syndrome, and chest syndrome, and shin syndrome, and there's hands and a waist. Yeah, he just kind of crumples up Minicon style, but that's okay. And so that's Hotrod in his vehicle mode, and I actually like it a lot. Now that that's out of the way, we'll go ahead and knock over Iguanus and take a look at the accessories for each figure. Shockwave's accessory is his cannon arm. We mentioned pretty much everything except for the gray plastic peg in here. Robot mode, it is forward. In vehicle mode, you pop it back, and then you plug the cannon into the back of Shockwave's head, which means that his cannon is literally powered by the evilness of his logical mind, which is, I think, very fitting for Shockwave. So there you have his weapon integration. Because the head is on a swivel, you can do a full 360 for rotation for the turret. So that's his articulation, but I wanted to show it off with the weapon. For Iguanus, he gets this little spiky gun thing, and he's not going to be able to hold it in robot mode because I did have the tab break off in his hand. I got the tab out of his hand. I'm eventually maybe going to glue it back on, but I mostly am just going to keep these guys hooked together, and we'll see what that is later on. But you just pop that in the top of the motorcycle. It's a peg, so it can swivel if you want it to. Starscream gets this tuning fork, and I'll go over paint and stuff like that when we get into describing them in robot mode. But there is a peg here in the front, and like the box showed, his tuning fork can peg in under there. You can have it facing out if you want him to be a beetle, and if you want it to look a little more tucked in, you can just kind of turn that around a little bit. And now he's just got some kind of weird mustache on his jet. He's got a mustache, and the reason it's flapping back is because he's traveling at supersonic speeds. Okay, he worked very hard on his mustache. Do not judge it. And then for Hotrod, bear in mind, I haven't looked at the instructions. I don't know if the weapons are talked about in the instructions. I don't know if they're named, but Hotrod has a lightning sword. So lightning sword just has a port that goes on this peg. I was interrupted by a tiny human who wanted water because it is in my nerd room. But it just pegs on the top there, and it fires lasers according to the box. And that is pretty much it for your vehicle mode not size comparisons. Vehicle modes as far as details goes. And we're actually not going to do vehicle size comparisons. They're just kind of size comparison with each other, because it's already going to be a while into this video, filming 4 things at once. So I'm not doing vehicle size comparisons. I'm going to do some robot ones for something later on, but for now, that's it. So we'll go ahead and start doing transformations, and then we'll take a look at their robot modes. Alrighty, starting off with Core Class Shockwave. He's the only one whose weapon I didn't remove because it's part of the vehicle. You don't even have to take it off right now. Just rotate the turret around, kind of tuck the gun in there so it's not flopping around. And then we're going to go ahead and rotate this gray section on the hinge. Back, there is a little tab in here that kind of slots into that groove right there. So we're just going to kind of rotate that back for now. You can move his arms up out of the way if you want. We are going to get this chest piece up. Now in the beginning I was using my thumb to get under here and pull this out, and I actually ended up pulling my thumb back, which is what that mark is from. So what I've been doing now is I've just been pushing down on it to loosen it, which will loosen the bottom plate and you can pull it up more easily. And then the sides of the legs, there's a peg and a port, so they pleg. The legs pleg onto the body section. So once those are unplugged, we can go ahead and rotate this up and flatten it out, because there is a hinge here. And then that tab is going to go into the groove that the top of the torso sat in. And then this section is just going to go over this tab. There isn't actually a groove for it. And so that all plugs together. Then we're going to take his legs and straighten them out. They just kind of soft tab into place like a thoop. Then rotate his feet forward. And then we'll go ahead and rotate his arms forward, and there is actually a lot going on here. There's a swivel above the hinge, a swivel below the hinge, and then the hinge itself. So if you don't want to rotate the hinge, I recommend rotating it all the way forward, then rotating it so that the fist is facing forward, and then rotating it back down. Because when you're trying to rotate this, sometimes it'll go just the forearm, and sometimes the entire hinge tries to go. So that time I got lucky. And then you can literally leave his gun on his back like this if you want, but we're going to go ahead and unplug it. Now, the plug in his head is pretty strong, and sometimes the gun comes off instead of the plug, so I found the best way to do this is actually to wiggle it out. And then we'll pop this forward, like we discussed in vehicle mode, and just slap it on either of his arms, and there you have a Shockwave in his robot mode. So we'll go ahead and take a look at the other transformations, and then we'll take a look at all the robots. Next up for transformation, here we have Iguanus. If you are doing the kickstand thing, you don't have to do anything with this foot, except maybe leave it flat and unplugged, and go ahead and unplug the other foot. Excuse me. And then there are two pegs on the sides of the legs that go into the tail. You want to unplug those. And one time I forgot and started bending the legs, so my peg has some stress marks and warps there. That's my fault for trying to straighten the leg out before I unplugged it. It's not the figure's fault. We'll go ahead and straighten the legs out, and we will rotate the feet around so they are facing correctly, and then we will rotate the shins around so they are facing correctly, because this is his tail is on his back. And then we'll go ahead and rotate this up out of our way for now, and we'll rotate the entire waist around, so that way we have his whole lower body complete. Then we'll go ahead and unpeg the arms from the wheels. It's just a 5mm port on the hand that goes there. And there's a little groove at the bottom of his fingers that goes around that notch on the poor peg there. So we'll go ahead and rotate that out. Also, not only is it unpegging from there, but you can see that this upper arm is still pegged into space, even though I have this away, because there is a bit of molding, waffling there that goes around a tab right there, just behind the shoulder area. So we'll rotate his arms down, and then this is going to come up, and this is going to come up, and they kind of sandwich together. It almost reminds me of the third-party Wrath figure, which I don't have, but I would like at some point. Then this, for motorcycle mode, it dupes into place, so you want to undupe it. You want to make sure when you're going into motorcycle that you completely dupe that right up against his little head crest there. We're going to undupe it and fold it down, and then you've got these tabs here that go into these notches in the little wheel wing assembly things. So we're just going to give it all a nice squeeze, kind of pull back on the wheels a little bit to get them locked in there. And then the last thing we're going to do is rotate his forearms into place, and that's it for him. For accessories, normally you would just plug his gun in, but because we can't do that because I broke it, we're just going to store it on his back for now. That's how we would store that. But I'm going to go over these in detail when we get to the weapon combination, because I'm just going to show them all off during that, and then give it to Iguanus because it's going to be his sword. And moving right along to the next guy, and here we are at the next guy. Here is Skywarp. His transformation is the same as Starscream's, and I honestly can't remember which mode I started with way back in the day, So we're starting with jet mode. If it's the same, oops, we're going to fold the fins up against the back fins here, and then there's a little notch they're hooked on down there in the wing section. You can kind of see it in between, like my finger is visible back there, and there's that notch. So we're going to push it past it, and then there's a little section in the wing that's going to sit over it in robot mode. Theoretically, I don't think they toleranced it for the paint, to be honest. On this side, the notch straight up sheared right off when I transformed it, so there's no notch there. But unlike Starscream, Skywarp's legs are so stiff back here that they are holding themselves into place. Starscream's one, I don't remember if it was in the video, but it got super loose on one of these, and the only thing that holds it into place is that notch, and it only works in vehicle mode, which is why he became a vehicle mode size comparison. Now that we've got that out of the way, we'll go ahead and unhook the chest here. There is a little groove right there, and there is a little notch in the back of this plate that goes into the groove. Same thing on this side, only difference being there are 3 notches. Focus on the notches. 3 notches and the remaining 3 grooves that we didn't use before. And we'll go ahead and unpeg the legs from the back. There are little grooves. Well, I guess I should say there's 2 tabs there, but they don't go into slots as much as these sections on the back of him go between the tab and the back of the calf section. So rotate the legs down, and we'll go ahead and rotate this head assembly down over here. So rotate that down, and then kind of angle this up and away, because there's a little notch here, or a little, like a notch there, and there's a little baby tab down in there. I don't know if you can see it, black plastic, but that notch goes over that. So we're going to fold it all down, and then we're going to take all of this stuff and swing it around a full 360. Bring this up. The head came with it. We don't want it to come with it yet. We're going to fold the nose cone back on this double hinge here, so it's resting along the back. Forgivable for core class, not forgivable for Voyager class, in my opinion. And then we're going to take his face, rotate it around, and the head will sit back in there. I don't think there's any spot it necessarily pegs in. It's just going to sit in there, and then the chest kind of holds it in place when we get that in. And speaking of which, we're going to take those notches, and the one in the middle, or the 2 in the middle I should say, are going to go into the slot, and then the one on the outside is going to kind of plug into the bottom of this intake vent to snap that in place. And then we'll take the other side and clip that into place. Go ahead and separate his legs. I like to just angle his wings back, and when you do that, the tab in the forearm will come undone from the notch here. Again, I don't know if it was toleranced correctly with the paint, because they don't seem to hold as securely as Starscream's, and that is fine. And there you have Skywarp in his robot mode. His weapon is his Cybertronic tuning fork. You've got a 5mm and a 2mm port. I want to say I said they were 3 in a previous video, and I was incorrect. They're actually 2, but it was a guess, so not bad. There you have him with his tuning fork, and his tuning fork can store the same place it did in vehicle mode on his back with that notch there. I don't know if you could transform this with it still attached, but considering part of it goes over his face, I'm gonna say no. We'll put that down, and then you have Skywarp in his robot mode, so we'll go ahead and move on to our last guy. And last but not least, here we have Hotrod ready for transformation, and the first thing we're going to do for this is we're going to pop this entire section up. It's going to come apart. There is a slot and a tab there that you can see that will sandwich together, and then these 2 tabs here on this section will go into that notch down there. These 2 tabs up here are actually meant for when you're folding it into the leg transformation. When I fold this shut, this pair of tabs is going to go into that pair of slots there. I'm trying to focus on my thumb in the front of the vehicle, but hopefully you saw where I pointed. And then we're going to go ahead and separate the legs from the arms. There are little hooks under here that just tab into the legs that are on the forearms, so we're going to undo those And then there are big old tabs on the spoiler section that go under these grooves in vehicle mode, so you want to make sure that it is not over it, but you want to make sure that the leg section is over the top, not the tab. So undo that, and then there is a little T-tab clicky joint there in his leg. There's the holy end and there's the sticky end. You're going to untab those and get all of this off to the side. Fold the spoiler up at a 90-degree angle for the time being, and then his legs, this is how they were in car mode. Excuse me. We're going to combine our wars them open like that. Fold the windshield down, fold the hood onto it, tab it into place as previously mentioned. Same thing on this side, and you've got his legs all done. He's got some calf backpacks, but he's core class, so we'll let that go. The hands do tab in to the side here. There is a little tab on the forearm that goes in there, so we'll go ahead and rotate the arms down there pretty tight. There you go. And then there's two ways to transform his back. I'm going to show the first way, which is how I'll have it, because he's not going to have his weapon. But you've got a post there that the sword tabbed into, and there's a hole in his back, and you can go ahead and snap that in. It makes a nice solid looking hot rod from the front. It doesn't look bad, it holds together, but there's no like where to store the weapon, because you've got a port there and a port there, and these things, they don't mix. So if you want to, you can take this entire spoiler section off and use it as a boomerang. No, but there is on one of those notches on the outside of the peg, kind of like Iguanus's tire, and there's a notch in here, but there's also, curiously, a notch on the other side, so you can flip this around and peg it in to that section, and that still looks pretty good as a spoiler on your hot rod. This section is a little wiggly, but it's stooped into place so it's not falling anywhere, and now you can take the little port on the sword and you can plug it into the back here. So there you go. You've got sword storage for hot rod. And then if you wanted to hold it, you've got another 5mm, 2mm split there. At least, you know what? Someone go ahead in the comments. Are these two or are these three? Because I thought they were three. They look three to me in my eye, but I read that they were two somewhere, or maybe I watched it in a review. But the difference between the sizes makes me think that it's three. I don't know if they're, because if it went from 5 to 2, that'd be 1.5 millimeters distance between this edge and the edge of the small peg on each side, because it would be the radial equivalent. And I don't really see that being thin enough to be 2. But he can hold his sword. We'll put that back in the weapon pile, and that is it for the last transformation, which was hot rod. So we'll go ahead and get all the other guys back in here and take a look at them, and then I'll show off the weapons up close, and then how to hook them together and all of that good stuff. Alrighty guys, here we have them all together in robot mode. And to be perfectly honest, as far as just the robot modes go, Iguanus is my favorite. I like the way it looks, I like the way it articulates. I'm going to give him the big sword, so that's a plus on him because I think he wields it the best. Shockwave is cool for what it is, but it just makes me sad that there's not a bigger one. I love you, Skywarp, and so you've got points there, and Rodimus is okay. Especially for one of the pros I have later on, which we'll be looking at. But Iguanus, to me, he's my favorite, even though I broke his weapon on accident. But we'll go ahead and start taking a look at these guys up close and personal. Here you have the Shockwave figure in his robot mode. A lot of the paint from vehicle carries over, like the gun metals in the arms, in the legs, in the area here on his ankles. But you've also got gunmetal plastic up in his body now. You've got some really thin silver outline on this window with a little bit of silver down here, and then this nice pink purpley color in the middle. It looks very Shockwave, it looks very good. On his head there's some paint here on his ears that I didn't mention in vehicle mode, but you've also got the silver and yellow in the eye that I did mention. And then he's just covered in all that good live action detail that they are known for. Here he is from the side with no cannon arm. And so it's all paint from the vehicle mode. There's not going to be a lot of new paint discussion here. The back, while unpainted for the most part, except for the treads, isn't boring because there's lots of different colors breaking it up. This is a little jarring and wonky, but I'm not mad at it. I like color breakup. It makes things interesting. And then here he is from the side with the gun arm. I mean, his hand's right there, but it's convincing enough that it's a gun arm. And that is it for his looks. For the head, it is literally on a mushroom peg that you can see in there if you try hard enough. So it is on a 360. That was turret articulation in the vehicle mode. You've got a ball joint at the shoulder that allows you to move a full 360 and gives you that much at the shoulder and acts as a little bit of a bicep swivel. Not a whole lot of swivel there, but the above elbow has you covered because, like I said, you can swivel above the elbow and you can swivel below the elbow. 360-ish degrees depending on the angle of the elbow. And then you have this elbow hinge, which due to transformation goes all the way back, all the way forward. So you've got a nice elbow, a little under 90 degrees, but no rotation at the wrists. The gun arm has the same articulation, as it turns out, because of there being no hand articulation. There is no waist, which I feel like in a bigger toy they could have cut a waist on, but on a toy this small with a waist that thin, I wouldn't have wanted to chance it either. He's got a ball joint at the hip, which allows for a little bit of thigh swivel. There's no saving hinge here at the leg like there was for the arm though, so that's all you're going to get. Goes out reasonable, goes back a good bit. I was going to say most of the way, but it's not most of the way, it's a lot of the way. Then it goes forward about the same amount, and then you've got a bend at the knee, slightly under 90 degrees, and then you've got the bend at the foot for transformation, so you can get a little bit of toe tip up from where I would say flat is, and then you can go all the way back due to transformation. And that's basically it for Shockwave, but he kind of just stands there, does science, looks scary, and shoots you to death with his arms. So he doesn't have to be super agile. He's a tank, and so he moves like a tank. And that is him done. Alright, we'll go ahead and take a look at Iguanus now, arguably my favorite. You can see all that paint from vehicle mode came through on the chest details. You've got some gray paint here on the waist that we could get a glimpse of in vehicle mode. The red wheels up here being painted makes a nice color breakup up here with the purple against the red. If this was just a purple wheel, it wouldn't look any good. If it was black, it would look okay, but that red really pops well with the purple. You've got the black on the forearms, so they're not just one flat boring color, and you've got a little bit of gold here on the legs, so they're not one flat boring color either. This ball joint is a little bit loose. I'm gonna have to fix that with some floor polish. And then you've got yellow in his laser eyes that are lasers that I didn't know were lasers until now. Mine had a small paint mishap. Originally I thought his head didn't move, and it's because I had some paint attached to this little spike here. You can see the damage in the paint, and you can see the little bit of material hanging off the spikes. So when they put his head on, there must have been some paint that wasn't all the way dry, and it glued his head there for a minute. But his head does now roll. Speaking of articulation, this is a ball joint, so you can get a little bit of tilt. You can't really go up that much, other than you can go down and kind of normal. It doesn't really go up unless you consider this normal and this up. It's such a minor difference in movement though that I basically just have it all the way down for vehicle mode and all the way up for robot mode. You can go side to side. His face horns and his chin and stuff start running into stuff, so that's about all you get, but that's good enough for me. The shoulder is on a ball joint. It can go all the way around until it hits the wheel. There isn't a lot of bicep swivel, but with the elbow being a ball joint, you do get elbow swivel, which is about as good. You do get movement at the elbow. It is over 90 degrees, slightly, because of the cut on that ball joint. Nothing at his hands. You get waist articulation, 360 degrees, that the backpack does not really hinder. And we saw that in the transformation. As far as legs go, you have a ball joint at the hip, which allows you to get out a reasonable amount. It doesn't go back too far. It will get caught on his underpants, but it will go forward all the way. And then you can get a little bit of thigh swivel out of that, and then you've got knee swivel, because it is, again, on a ball joint. It'll get you all the way around, and because of the cut, it does get you a little over 90 degrees. So he's like the opposite of Shockwave, where he's getting just over where Shockwave was getting just under. And then due to transformation, his foot is on a ball joint, so you get forward, down tilt, toe tilt, up toe tilt. You get ankle rotation, and you get a 90-degree rocker. That is the best foot articulation I've seen on a core class figure, and I think you could even consider it to be better than a lot of the third-party legends I have. I think the only thing that comes close is the New Age Optimus Prime, because it does too have a ball joint down there at the ankle, and I think it has a toe that actually articulates individually, so he might even win there, but that's pretty impressive from a Hasbro figure. And then the spin, if you're so inclined. I gotta get his feet balanced again. There we go, plant him down. Take a look at Skywarp. Here, you've got the nice silver on the air vents in the chest coming through, and they're actually two different pieces, but they kind of flow right into each other, which looks really nice. Got all that jetty molded detail. The nice paint for the cockpit did get done on the chest as well, and it's orange, so I love it. You've got his face is kind of a bland neutral expression, which is okay, because that's the expression I gave my KO slightly upscaled New Age version. You've got red eyes there, purple arms, purple feet, purple fins. The rest of it is cast in black plastic, so the detail is a little washed out, but there is some color breakup, so I can't be too mad about it, because he's got some color differences here and there that make him not just solid black. For articulation, his head is on a swivel. It is very hard for my fingers to get to because it is small, and the vents are there, but I'm pretty sure you can get it most of the way around, if not all the way around. If I'm plugged this, well, you can get it all the way around. It rotates 360 for transformation. I just don't know if I can actually maneuver it all the way around. For the shoulders, we'll go ahead and pop these ones back real quick. You can do a full 360 at the shoulder with the wings popped back. They go out 90 degrees. You've got a little bit of bicep, and you've got a complete 360 at the... Oh, I unplugged his chest. A complete 360 at the bottom of the bicep, or the elbow, if you will. You have a cut at the elbow that gets you pretty much 90 degrees on this one. No wrist articulation again. It's a core class. The wings flap forward and back. There is a duping point, so I usually just push them until it stops, and that's where I have mine angled. If you wanted to know, I doubt you did. No waist articulation on him. You've got a universal that lets you go out to the side that far. It goes back this far before it runs into the back, and then it goes forward pretty much all the way. You have barely any thigh swivel, but again, popped his leg off. But again, that ball joint knee. Will you act like a knee? I don't know. I don't think it acts like a knee. There's too much in the way. It doesn't really turn. So between the ball joint in the thigh and the ball joint in the knee, that's about as much thigh swivel as you're going to get. So no, ball joint in the knee is basically just a hinge. They could have put a hinge there and had the same amount of movement. Speaking of the hinge, it gets you just under 90 degrees. There is no articulation in the feet besides the transformation for the tail wings. They're just kind of angled at an angle that would be pleasing for standing. And that is it for Skywarp. Oh, here he is from the back, showing off the paint. And you've got the stripes on the wings with the Decepticon symbols. So again, not totally boring from the back. You've got the silver peeking through at the top. There are no Decepticon symbols on the bottom of the wings, which is okay with me. and we didn't look at Iguanus' back, but here it is. It's the hood of the vehicle, and now the little Cobra thing has kind of expanded into the wheels, which is kind of what I think they're going for. And then you've got the Decepticon logo, and then the bottom of the back is just a bunch of purple, but it's the back. So I'm more okay with that as long as the front is interesting. And here we have Hotrod, which is the last guy, and he is basically just red. I'm not really counting the wheels that much as color breakup because they're just little black specks. You've got some orange on his thighs. His chest is painted in orange with yellow paint, and there's that Autobot symbol we were missing in vehicle mode. Then you've got gray on the paint with, I believe, the blue that's on the sword is on his eyes, but it's super tiny. I believe there's a difference in color between the face and the eyes, and that this blue is it. But when you're looking at him from as far as he is from me, being behind the camera and everything, it's almost indistinguishable to tell that that's a different paint. It just looks like the light's hitting it different because the eyes are sunk back a little bit. And there's no other paint on the front of this figure at all. He has no paint on his arms, no paint on his shins. You get some paint on the sides, which we'll go over, and the only other paint you see is the windows back here on his leg kibble. This is gripe number one with this figure. They painted this entire piece of red plastic yellow when they could have just molded it that color and used the paint budget somewhere else. Well, that is my issue number one with this figure. Coming down the side, you have the painted little arm guns made out of his pipes there. The bottom of the pipes end up being on the side of the leg, so he got some colors there. And then the back has almost more color breakup than the front, because you can readily see those pipes because they're not being covered by the undercarriage of the car here, which rendered these invisible from the front, and these are you know, just barely there. But from the back you can see all that silver. You've got silver, orange, and yellow down here for the front of the car, and you've got the big old should have been molded but was painted spoiler up there. And so the back almost looks like it's got more color breakup than the front. Now, if you did leave this in the original configuration, which I intend to do, so I'm moving it back because we're not going to store that weapon again, there is more red. So it ends up being about the same as the front of him. You've got some words in there. Made in Vietnam. Alright. But that's it. You've got lots of details in here that are just completely washed away with the lack of paint on this guy. That is gripe number one. Gripe number two is, a lot of people's have this gripe, is that his head is completely hollow. I forgave this on drag strip because it molded to look like a seat, and it sits where the seat would in vehicle mode. This I will not forgive. This is just lazy saving plastic, and it's completely hollow, and none of the other core class did it. Like, Iguanus has a head sculpt like twice this size, and it's completely solid, other than where the ball joint goes in. This is not excusable in any means whatsoever. But that's pretty much it. The rest of the figure I am okay with. For articulation, his hollow-ass head is on a swivel. It can go about that far. For his chin, his heroic chin runs in the stuff. You've got a ball joint on the shoulder, but unlike the rest, it does not go out very far at all. And so Hotrod is just cursed on his shoulders. I haven't reviewed the Deluxe Voyager yet, but we'll see that he's kind of cursed. You move his backpack out of the way, and you can rotate it all the way around though. With the backpack in place, you can get it about this far. It's not going to angle out wide enough to go around it. And you can... Okay, that was uncomfortable, but we'll never do that again. But yeah, full 360 rotated from the back. You've got a little bit of thigh swivel due to the ball joint. You've got a elbow swivel at the top of the elbow due to the ball joint. You've got 90 degrees of bend at the elbow. No wrist articulation. His forearms are kind of short looking, and that's more of a nitpick than an actual gripe, like an actual con. It doesn't bother me that much, but they are a little short. But with the size class so small, proportions can get a little wonky. As for the legs, you've got outward at these ball joints. They can go all the way back. The only guy who has been able to do that all day so far. They can go all the way forward and then some. For the knee, you can bend it a little under 90 degrees because of the kibble, and then with it being a ball joint, it does do a swivel, as well as working with the one in the thigh, so you can get some thigh swivel poses if you want. And then his feet are static and angled, and that is it for and that is it for Hotrod's articulation. In robot mode, now we'll go ahead and show off the weapons before I start getting into some size comparisons. Here is Skywarp's weapon, molded in black plastic with red painted on. I've already got chipping going on there, and it is the Cybertronian weaponized tuning fork. So that's Skywarp's weapon. Iguanus' weapon is this weird cannon that plugs into his hand. It makes me think of they were just going for a generic blaster, but I feel like this would look better if it was mounted on a wrist instead of in a hand. And you've got these fins on the side with some red paint. It's covered in that gold paint that's on his chest. And then you had a 2mm port for little guys to hold it, and I broke that. And then you've got the 5mm port. You know what? I'm just calling them 3mm ports. They look 3mm to me until someone corrects me. You've got the 5mm port on the bottom, so that way you can plug it into his back, and bigger guys could potentially hold it. And then Hotrod's weapon is the sword. It is molded in the same red plastic he is, with the paint that I believe his eyes are made of going up the tip here. I'm not sure if this is supposed to be a blue blade with electricity running down it, or if the whole blade is supposed to be made of energy and that's just power surging through it. Either way, to combine the weapons, we're going to take Hotrod's sword and we're going to line it up with this and push it down in, just kind of get it centered there. I like the little peg hole to be facing the same way as the big peg. And then we'll take Skywarp's weapon at an angle here, and we'll take this side with the prongs, and they're going to fit around all of this, and which is why you've got this peg here. It's going to go up in there, and again I have the peg on the same side, which kind of works out that I broke the one off of this side, because now the clean side of the weapon, air quotes, looks cleaner without that on there. It looks like that was molded in purple plastic, by the way, if I didn't mention it. And there you have the big old combined sword deal. It's not super impressive, but I do like how all the colors blend together. You've got the black handle going into the red, which pops out of the gold there in the middle and then continues at the top and produces an energy blade. And like I said, I'm going to give it to Iguanus, because I think that I like the way it looks on him the best, because he does have black, red, and gold, which is the only character to have all three colors of the sword on him at once. Skywarp had the black, but no gold, and unless you count his eyes, no red. Hotrod had the red and the black on his wheels, if you want to count those, but he had no gold. The only thing Hotrod has on this sword that Iguanus doesn't is the blue paint of the energy blade in his eyes, which I'm not counting the eyes, so Skywarp doesn't have red either. There you've got Iguanus with that sword. We'll go ahead and take a look at some individual size comparisons for them all. Just that I have lined up for robot mode, except Iguanus. Iguanus is just going to be in this group shot, and that's it. I don't have the original Pretender to compare him to or anything. And then we'll go on to our final thoughts. Starting off the size comparisons, here we have him with the pretty much Voyager height Siege Shockwave. It's the only other Shockwave I own. But there you have kind of a pure G1 modern take on Shockwave with the Bumblebee movie aesthetic. So you can just kind of see how they really did take G1 and just kind of make it live action, instead of just making completely unrelated designs that are reminiscent to the original character. I don't really hate the Bayverse designs for the most part. I watched the movies and stuff when I was in my teens. I had a lot of the figures, and I had lived through a lot of different series with a lot of different iterations by then, so it wasn't just years of the same design for a character for me. So I think that's why it was easier for me to accept the new designs, because I'd been doing it for most of my life through the Unicron trilogy, Beast Wars, car robots, things like that. But that's it for Shockwave's comparison. Here you have the core class Starscream with the KO Legend Scale not Starscream. Here you have core class Skywarp with the KO Legend Scale Skywarp from New Age that was KO'd by somebody else. So you can see I like the purple on both. I like the dark purple, but I also like the light purple, and you can see just how much they made the KO New Age look really good compared to this core class. It's not a bad core class figure, and it is much smaller, but this Skywarp is shorter than your average deluxe, and it looks better than the Voyager mold, so I don't really think the core class had a chance. But that's them together. And then for the last figure, getting a size comparison, here you have the core class Hot Rod with the deluxe Voyager Hot Rod. And the deluxe one has just got all that color breakup I wanted, and you can just see how red the core class one looks. It doesn't, not really fair that I have the visor out on the deluxe sized one, but even if I didn't, I think the eyes would pop more. And that's pretty much it for the comparisons. I have one more comparison I'm going to do, and then we'll go ahead and get into final thoughts. And here is that final comparison. I just thought it was interesting. If you have the Earthrise, Netflix, or Kingdom Voyager sized Optimus Prime with your deluxe sized Hot Rod from the Studio Series, and you have the New Age, any of the New Age Optimus Primes that are this size, I don't know if it's going to get knocked off and slightly oversized like my Jets are, but if you have the original New Age Prime mold in any size or color, and you have this core class Hot Rod, they're almost the same scale as the deluxe and Voyager Hot Rod and Optimus, which is pretty fun. If you took this little Hot Rod and you put some orange paint on his forearms, some black paint on his legs and feet to give him a little more color, maybe some silver on the shoulders and whatnot, you could actually have a nice little tiny in scale robot of Hot Rod to go with your New Age Optimus, if you could get past any faults you have with the mold. And I thought that was fun. But that's it, so we'll go back to our final thoughts. Alrighty guys, and that pretty much wraps up this 4-parter review of all of the little core class guys that I haven't reviewed yet. Right off the bat, Iguanus is my favorite. Undisputed out of the bunch. I think he has the best posability. I think that he looks the coolest as a robot. I'm biased towards reptiles. I do have snakes, as you saw in the intro. I have real ones too, though. So I've got my wife and I each have a ball python. If I haven't mentioned that, they might make an appearance in the video at some point. But he is my favorite. His vehicle mode is arguably the weakest as far as something that looks cohesive, but now that I know that it is kind of a faithful homage of sorts to the original toy, I can actually forgive the vehicle faults. The robot poses really great. It almost has the posability I'd expect to find on a standard deluxe. Some deluxes don't have wrist swivel, and he has the ankle tilt and swivel and pretty much everything else you would want. So yeah, it's a core class that poses like a deluxe basically. And then my second favorite might be Hot Rod right now, just because I like his car and he's fun to have to fiddle around with, and I like that he scales with my New Age Optimus in about the same scale class as these Chug figures are. Skywarp, without being, if I was being biased, Skywarp would be my second favorite, because he's the other, he's not good enough to top Iguanus on his own just out of character merit, but I do enjoy Skywarp. I like the purple and black color scheme, because it has purple in it. One of those, Hot Rod does have orange, so Skywarp and Hotrod are a toss-up for second place, and then Shockwave is in third. He's not a bad figure. Actually, I like Shockwave the most as a character in Transformers, because I identify with him as a person who likes science and is pretty monotone, as you might have guessed, and thinks logically. Shockwave is pretty close to me, so I just think that his articulation lets him down, and his alt mode is maybe close to the same amount of cohesion as Iguanus is, as far as they didn't really have much to do. Only Iguanus has an homage, and Shockwave is just kind of copying his Beast Hunter's self from the Prime show, I guess. So he's in last place, but he's not a bad figure. It's just that for reasons, biased or otherwise, I like the other ones. If I took away my color and character biases, Shockwave might be even second, with Hotrod in third and Skywarp in fourth, because it's a repeat mold, which I generally don't get, but I wanted to have the sword, and Skywarp's my favorite, and if they had released him first, I would have got him instead of Starscream. So this is the third example of me having a copy of a mold. Hooray. Out of vehicle modes, I like Hotrod's the best. I think it makes a really good car. It could use a little paint maybe, but it holds together and it looks really cool, and I like driving it around. Cons, Shockwave's posability is his detriment. Other than that, I don't really have any issues with him. I have no issues with Iguanus whatsoever, other than the fact that I broke the peg, but since he's going to have the giant sword, I don't really care anyway. Skywarp didn't come with Null Rays. I know that's a big con for a lot of people, and they would have rather had them than the sword piece, but since I bought him just to get the sword piece mostly, I'm not going to count that as a con for me. You can get 3D printed ones, or if you have a printer, print your own 3D printed ones. I have Starscreams glued to him, or else I'd pop those off, paint them black, and pop them on the Skywarp. And they might even fit better because they were super loose on Starscream, which is why I glued them. So if I spray painted them black, they might have the tolerance they needed to stay on Skywarp. But my KO Skywarp doesn't even have his Null Rays on, which he came with, because they're in the baggie in the box. So Null Rays, I know they're an iconic part of the character, but I can take them or leave them, so they're not a detriment. There's pretty much nothing wrong with him. His articulation lets him down a little bit, but actually it lets him down maybe more than Shockwave's even does. So yeah, I guess articulation would be his criticism. Hotrod's criticism is the paint in the front of his robot mode and his hollow head, which I think is, the hollow head's going to be everyone's criticism with Hotrod. Anyone who might have criticized no weapon storage in robot mode, take a look at the transformation, or I believe that's where I showed off their weapons, was in the transformations. I could be wrong. It's been a long morning already, and I still have to go throughout the rest of the day. It was a long week. So this is the first day that I've had off this week, and I'm filming this bright and early in the morning, so I can edit it and stuff by Wednesday, because that's when I'm going to put this out, is Wednesday probably. But it's not a bad bunch. Out of the core class figures from Studio Series, Shockwave is definitely my favorite. It's cool that Ravage can go inside Soundwave, but his alt mode is nothing, and he's actually very small compared to Shockwave in both modes. If I had him out, he's currently a box inside of Soundwave. If I had him out, you'd be able to see just how darn small he is, and I only got him because he goes into Soundwave. I don't know if you didn't have a Soundwave if he would be worth the price based on his size alone. He's definitely not worth the price on play value without Soundwave. And like I said, so he's my favorite out of the two from Studio Series. My favorite out of these three from this wave of core class from Legacy is Iguanus, and I think that's about it. So go ahead and give the video a like if you liked it. Go ahead and comment if these are 2mm or 3mm pegs. go ahead and check out my playlists and social media links in the description. And with all that out of the way,